Again, we had the meeting in the back of the room, but we do have Caitlin Randall with us from the Crestview News Bulletin. Welcome. First time here. I'm sure you'll enjoy it. Also, we have with us Commissioner Nathan Boyles from the Okaloosa County Commission. Thank you for joining us this evening. We'll try to slip you into our busy schedule here, because I know you just would love to talk to us. At this time, if you haven't silenced electronic device, please do so. If you would like to speak in front of the council, we had these nifty little yellow cards you can fill out outside the door and give to me. Other than that, I would ask that you join me one more time in the Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Well, that was a robust rendering of the Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you all. We have no open policy making, so what I'll do is we don't sign in at workshops, but all council members are here. For people who just joined us, the mayor is in the hospital, down with the combination of flu, pneumonia, and Betsy Roy is also down with some kind of sickness, is not here this evening either, so we wish them well. And by the way, those of you in the audience who know Patty Gonzo, you know she had an accident, a stroke, combination stroke and accident a little over a week ago. She is now back in the city. She's over at Show Creek Rehab. I went and saw her the other day, and it's going to be a long journey for her, but she's making recovery. So keep her in your prayers also, if you would. Could I have action by the council on the agenda, please?
Mr. President.
Yes, Mr. Hayes.
Motion to approve the agenda for the City Council workshop for January 22nd, 2018.
Apparatus, so second.
Motion second to approve tonight's agenda. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Vote carries. Okay, what I would like to do at this time, since we have one person sign up to speak, before we get into the workshop at all, Commissioner Boyles, if you would like to have a couple minutes with us, you're certainly welcome to do that. I won't hold you to a couple minutes, but
I will try and be brief, and I appreciate the opportunity. Mr. President, it's always good to be back in the City Council chambers and always good to be in front of the City Council. As you know, we had a joint meeting that was scheduled for last week and was interrupted by the weather, unfortunately. And as I'm talking, I think I'll go ahead and hand these out so y'all can be passing them down. And so really all I wanted to do was get back in front of you, as I've been trying to do every couple of months, and give you an update on some of the really important work that's happening in your downtown district, in particular projects that the county is undertaking. And so first I'll start with the courthouse and just let you know that everything is running on schedule, in accordance with the schedule that I provided you the last time that I was in front of you. Still looking, targeting an August completion date. They did lose a little bit of time over the last couple of weeks with the cold weather, some of the bonding on some of your adhesives and some of the mortar work that's going on. That did move along a little more slowly than they had hoped because of the cold weather, but it looks like they're going to be able to keep us on schedule at this point, again, targeting that August completion date. We're also working on trying to finalize a set of plans to be approved by the Water Management District, which will delete the holding ponds that were originally designed for that property. As you know, redeveloping a site, we have to meet stormwater requirements. And that work has been in partnership with your Public Works Department and with the Crestview Housing Authority. As you know, much of the water, or half of the water from the downtown district, flows into the stormwater pond, which is located in the center of the Crestview Housing Authority complex. And so that's likely where that water will continue to go, and the effort is to jointly work to make some improvements to that existing pond so that it could hold that flow and get the approval of the Water Management District. And so that work continues, and hopefully that will not delay the project at all. I also wanted to give you a revised drawing that shows the latest rendition of the efforts to redevelop the old Piggly Wiggly site in downtown Crestview. As you know, that was bought by the county, that was done in partnership with the CRA, and funding that was provided by the CRA, and funding that's now going to go to redevelopment. When I was in front of you several months ago, you had requested that the county see if there was the possibility of including a pad or a location for a set of restrooms. I got the blessing from my fellow commissioners, and we undertook that effort. And as you can see in this revised drawing that's in front of you, you see where the location of a restroom footprint. That footprint has been built based upon some drawings that your Public Works Department provided that shows a standard footprint for a city set of public restrooms in one of your public parks. It appears that it will fit into the site quite nicely. And in addition to that, my Public Works Department indicates they could probably build that facility in-house using in-house labor at a cost of somewhere, we think, south of $25,000. And so that's something, if this board is interested in, I will be more than happy to take that back to my commission and ask for the approval or authority to utilize those in-house resources. As we've discussed in the past, that would still be a cost. It would be borne by the CRA, but my expectation is that is probably at least half of what you could go out and have that construction effort contracted for privately. So I will leave that with you, but if that's an effort that you would like to take, have me take back to my commission, I'm happy to do so. And then the final item that I wanted to touch on was just the ongoing negotiations of the CRA district. I know that my commission had authorized a delegation, including myself, to meet with Mr. Witten and some others from the city. My understanding from your board meeting is that you opted for the full session. Again, that was a session that unfortunately got delayed last week because of the weather. I think we've looked at a tentative date sometime in mid-February for the rescheduling of that meeting. I do know that the legislature is in session, and so we are all at risk during the period of time that the legislature is in session. And my understanding is that there continues to be an effort to target CRAs, and whether or not coming out of this legislative session, CRAs will be able to be extended or enlarged, I think is very much an open question at this point in time. And so I will just, from the county's perspective, certainly from my perspective as an individual commissioner, to the extent this board, this council has an interest in allowing those informal negotiations to proceed while we wait for that mid-February date for a joint session, I certainly think that could be productive and may shorten our timeline to getting a solution, which is, of course, we want this district to be vibrant and make sure that that CRA is as successful as it can be. I've had the opportunity to see your president at work and to negotiate and debate him on a few issues, and he's a tough cookie, and so I would be happy to have that opportunity to work with him. So, again, thank you. If I can answer any questions, I'll be happy to do so.
Gentlemen, any questions, comments? Would you, you said something about informal until we have the formal, and I just got that message today, gentlemen. So we're going to find out how many people will be available on the 13th of February is the suggested date right now for a full negotiation. If we were to do that, 13th of February, 2 p.m., and we'd have to look at the availability of Warriors Hall. If you could check into that for me, Teresa.
Mr. President.
Yes, go ahead.
One question, since our commissioner was asking, on for the plans here. Are you looking for a consensus? We know we can't vote on it, but are we looking for a consensus on that for you to take back until we do a formal vote?
Sure. And that would certainly be helpful for me, Councilman, just so I can give my commission an update and get some direction on the potential of utilizing that in-house labor.
Mr. President, I think it's good. But still is informed us that his crew basically couldn't take care of that. I think the price, based on what I've heard from my commissioner, is a fair and reasonable amount, and that we definitely need the restrooms downtown. So I would be strongly in favor of this.
Well, yeah, we've authorized the restroom, so the key is, are we going to spend more money or less money?
Well,
and so, yes, go ahead, Ms. Fairclough.
It certainly is going to have to be tamper-proofed from anyone that would desire to be a criminal mischiever. That's why I suggested when we started discussing that everything be stainless steel and embedded in concrete.
Yes. And if I may, Mr. President,
yeah, go ahead.
My understanding, Mr. Fairclough, is that is exactly the type of design that has been provided, and your park staff, as well as my park staff, has some experience with the process of trying to vandal-proof those facilities. And my understanding, this set of plans meets that criteria from your Public Works Department and mine as well.
Well, just looking at the interior walls there, I guess that's a plumbing chase or a closet. They're not concrete block, apparently. I was just wondering how easy that would be to knock a hole in or tear something off the wall.
It is
By-
concrete
by
block
man.
with steel
Is
doors.
it?
Yes, sir.
8 each.
That interior section is part of the two interior walls of the bathroom walls and the outside walls. So it's, if that makes sense to you, it's just like the walk track restrooms. It's over at Twin Hills Walk Track.
Okay, all right.
Any other comments, questions? I want to go back to where you said maybe an informal get-together before the formal
Sure.
get-together. Would you?
Sure,
Expand on that a
I
little
think it's very prudent for us to go ahead and with your council and with my commission to get that joint meeting date set. I think that gives us something all to work towards. I also think it probably would not be terribly prudent to do nothing between now and that date. And so I understand you'll need authorization from your fellow council members, but I think having that opportunity for us to work through that process, have some meetings with our staff to try and see if we can limit the number of issues that need to be discussed in that public meeting, may ultimately make that public meeting more productive and potentially even unnecessary if we can get an agreement that you could bring to your council and I could bring to my commission that everybody thought was a success. And so that would simply be my ask or my recommendation, is to allow that process to continue as we prepare for that joint meeting if necessary.
Well, we've already voted to have negotiations. So what I'm looking at now is availability of people on the 13th at 2 p.m. Is everybody going to be available to be at this negotiation?
Schedule it.
Well, we'll look at availability of Warriors Hall too, because, you know, the dilemma we had after we scheduled the smaller mediation, we had it here in the chambers, and that was quite nightmare for Wayne to set up everything here in such a small area. So Warriors Hall definitely is a place
I wasn't
to
sure
have
if the
it.
council was sitting on the commission's lap or vice versa, but it was
No.
going to be crowded either way.
That wasn't
so.
going to happen. Does anybody, so everybody can make that meeting, or are you still checking your little e-devices here?
Well, it's good for me. The 13th is,
I can't hear you, Mr.
Tuesday.
Hawley. What?
You said-
I can't check my calendar till I get back to that.
Oh, okay, that's right. Well, if you would, let me know. We certainly would like to have you there, and we'll have to check with CRA director.
you said 2 p.m.?
Yes, 2 p.m., as long as we can all be there. Is there any objection to allowing the staffs to communicate with each other before that, to see if they can make some recommendations to us that might make things easier?
No
Any objections to that?
me.
Okay,
I think that would
we'll
be
do that. We'll get them talking to each other.
Sounds good.
Okay?
Anything else I can answer, gentlemen?
No, Commissioner, thank you.
I appreciate the opportunity. Have a good evening.
At this time, I call from anybody in the audience that would like to speak to the city council on any agenda items that we have. And we have two right now: environmental center plan and the ordinance on storage and use of recreational vehicles. Does anybody would like to speak to the city council at this time? Please identify yourself. I have one individual. If anybody else would like to speak, if you'd like to, please fill out a form. But at this time, Ms. Jones, you're certainly welcome to come up. And there's Teresa, but you go by Sue, right?
Yes.
Okay, and if you give us your address,
Okay.
and we'll give you 3 minutes, and nothing bad will happen to you if you go over 3 minutes, but I'll just give you an ugly stare, okay? All right.
I'm very passionate about this item.
Go ahead.
Yes. My name is Teresa Sue Jones. I go by Sue. I've lived in Crestview at 48 Abbey Road for 27, almost 28 years. And I'm a very proud RV owner for the last 2 years. It's part of our retirement. We attended the November 13th meeting, and where it was laid out a very, very restrictive ordinance to replace the antiquated ordinance. Now, Crestview, the Okaloosa County ordinance states in Regulation 6.00.04, Item 7, travel trailers, campers, motorhomes, travel trailers, campers, motorhomes shall not be used as a dwelling in residential units, districts. That's it. That's all we need. I drove around my neighborhood this afternoon, 1/2 hour. I counted 12 trailers, campers, and such, all parked in their driveways. Why? Because we have all these wonderful zero lot line covenants passed by our lovely city and county. When I purchased my RV, went and had a new driveway put in for a hardened surface to park it on. You took my money and issued me a permit to put that driveway in, knowing I was going to put an RV on it, and then turn around and come up with this. There is no way in the world I can put an RV in my backyard. I can't get a truck in my backyard. And I have a large backyard compared to my neighbors. I have some recommendations. We take the Okaloosa County ordinance. I'm an old military person, so this is the way I look at it. Take the Okaloosa County ordinance and add to it. 1, no vehicle, trailer, we define RV, which is defined in the county. It will not be hooked up to any water or sewer on a permanent basis. Because 1, that puts an undue burden, plus we don't want to mess up our waterworks, no. Plus it's ridiculous. No living in it full time. You gotta keep it plugged in because it's gotta keep the batteries charged and keep the mold down in it. It's an investment. It's a second home. The other thing, it should mirror the county ordinance, and that if somebody wants to sleep in it overnight, that's fine, but nobody can stay in it up to 3 days. Put a time limit on it, black and white, to let people know you cannot stay in this RV more than 3 days. This allows for, I don't know about you folks, but we live in Florida. Everybody comes to Florida for vacation. You get family that you didn't even know you had. And they come to visit at Christmas time. Well, this is my overflow. This is my extra guest house. Somebody can sleep there overnight. But 3 days, they're out of there. It's like fish. After 3 days, they smell. Make it simple. When I rode around my neighborhood this afternoon and spotted 12 other RVs and campers, it suddenly hit me. To enforce an extremely restrictive ordinance is what was proposed in the 13th of November meeting. It would put an undue burden on our enforcers. Plus, it's going to really make a lot of people really angry.
Need you to wrap it up, please. Thank you.
So, but I have that little bit of a recommendation. Just make it less restrictive.
Thank you. Thank you for bringing that to our attention. But as you know, the reason we brought it up at the workshop because we weren't all on board with the other ordinance. We're going to look at it this evening and see how we can fine tune it. But thank you for that input. Seeing nobody else from the audience, this time we'll move to workshop. Item 6A, presentation of environmental center plan. Mr. Morgan, if you would join us at the podium. Before Jeff begins his presentation, in full disclosure to everybody, I am a member of the Crestview Kiwanis Club, and but I'm not going to recuse myself because nothing they're doing is going to benefit me personally or me financially. So I will be engaged in the conversation and the voting because all they're doing is carrying out a project for the city that we granted permission to do about a year ago. So you have the floor now.
Mr. President, members of the council, I appreciate you letting us have a few minutes here to present what we would like to do and like for the council to get on board with us. My name is Jeff Morgan. I am known to most of you as the North District Sergeant for the Sheriff's Office, but I'm also the current president of the Crestview Kiwanis. In case you don't know, Kiwanis is an international charitable organization. There's over 7,200 clubs worldwide. A brief synopsis of the mission and the vision of the Kiwanis is to improve the community by making differences in the lives of children and be a positive influence in our community. And that's what we're here today to try to do. We're looking to discuss some improvements to the John McMahon Environmental Center. It's located at the corner of Maypoles and First, off of Butler Circle. Many people do not even know that there is a park there. It's located by the fire tower, which is a historical site as well. And we're, in conjunction with us and the city, we're proposing some changes to make this park user-friendly in an area that needs a park. I apologize for the small print on your packages there. This identifies some areas where the current buildings are located. The fire tower, the pavilion, the structure itself for the environmental center. The property does have a couple of ponds, one larger than the other, and a butterfly garden. And there's also plans to place a memorial tree in the park when hopefully we'll get all this work done. There's just about every tree native to Florida planted on that property. Most people are unaware of that. We're working on various projects since about 2014. As recent as 2016, we did some work with some local youth groups to add and update and improve upon some walking trails that go throughout the entire park. There are trees that are numbered and they're identified, and people can take a walk and go through there. Local school groups use it, the Boy Scouts use it, the Cub Scouts. So we're looking to, once again, as I've said, just to improve upon this. The small project we did back in 16 didn't cost us a ton of money, but we're a small group with a big vision, so we've been steadily using our time to fundraise, and I think we've done a fairly good job just based upon our size of our club. This is the current building. It is in sad shape. I believe it has, back up one please. I believe it has some asbestos issues on the siding. We have squirrels that are eating holes into the facility. Inside the building there are keepsakes. There is environmental sensitive pieces of history, and we're going to lose it if we don't do something with the building. This is just one picture of the inside. In your packages, you were provided the master plan, which is a very lengthy document which has more information on the environmental center and what is contained inside. It's more information in that master plan that could be presented in the short time that I have today. The building, as I said, has a lot of items inside of it. These items are going to need to be inventoried, categorized, and preserved. And I believe Mr. Steele has been addressing those issues, and hopefully we can save what's there before it gets ruined. The facility also has a pavilion. We've used pavilion on numerous occasions. It's open to the public through the city. It needs a little TLC, needs a little paint, needs a little cleaning. But basically that is probably that's the best structure on the property, is the pavilion. This is where we want to go. I will defer any questions on the funding through the city to Mr. Steele, as I in no means can address those issues. But we're looking to upgrade, and our club continues to fundraise to improve on our investment in the project. This is where we want to go. A building similar to this. It's much nicer, as you can see. Raise the old building, construct the new building. The one side of the building will be the environmental center with all of the items. The other side, we're discussing with Mr. Steele to have that as a meeting room, which can be utilized by various groups, organizations. Both sides could be secured independently. Also a bathroom centrally located that could be accessed to, say, if somebody just wants to rent the pavilion or whatever the case may be. And then we're also looking at, hopefully in the future, adding an outdoor bathroom. I have the storyboard here, which is just the snapshot of that. What we're looking to do is we're looking to raise the building, put up a new one. We are looking to get the bathrooms. There is a pond on the large pond has a pump on it. A lot of our fish have disappeared. I don't know whether somebody's fishing or the cats are eating well. I'm not sure. I have been in contact with the fish hatchery just inside Santa Rosa County. They have come out and spoke with our organization, and they are more than willing to provide some native fish to restock this, and also with an educational process as well, at no charge. Slide, please. As I said, I'll let Mr. Steele address the funding issues. This is what we're looking to do, some fencing, new building. We continue to raise money as a club to assist in our investment in the park, and hopefully we can continue to do so. I'll let Mr. Steele address the city's funding issues. Like I said, we are prepared as the Crestview Kiwanis to invest between $20,000 and $30,000 in playground equipment for the kids. Of course, that whatever is selected, you have some samples, I guess, in your packets of some various different kinds of playground equipment. Whatever is selected will be with the concurrence of Mr. Steele and his group and the city to make sure it meets all the criteria that need to be met for liability issues and such. But for a small club as ours, we've got about 35 members right now, that's a pretty substantial investment, and that's a pretty good chunk of money that we are looking to invest in an area where there's not a park, in an area of town that needs a park. And I think the people in that area deserve a park that they can use. Most people don't even know there's a park there. So we want to make it more user-friendly. Mr. Steele?
Thank you, Jeff. Members of the council, what we have over there is the city has an investment. We have, as you well know, Mr. McMahon, Ms. McMahon entrusted the city with what the belongings and the things that he worked his entire lifetime basically putting over there. And we need to do something, and we need to do something soon, or a lot of those items are like Jeff said, the old place that they're in is becoming dilapidated, and we can't keep working on it and keeping it up. So a few months, 6-8 months ago, I met the Kiwanis, and when I heard what they were wanting to do, I went before their board and group and made a suggestion, simply because we have an account that's called Park Reserves account. That account is, we come about that funding whenever a new development comes to the city of Crestview. They either are required to build a park of some sort for children, recreation within that development, or they're required to pay the city money so that we can improve parks within areas in the city. And that money adds up over time. Right now we have a balance that's sufficient enough for us to move forward with a 30 by 60 building, including the amenities that Jeff has spoken of as listed on that slide right there. And I made that proposal to Ms. Royce saying, look, we're doing improvements to other parks. We're doing improvements to Allen Park. We're doing improvements to Twin Hills Park and Northview Park. We have this extra funding. We really need to do something over at the Environmental Center. Let's use this money for that, because that money, that pot gets refreshed pretty often as new developments come into the city. New monies are deposited into that account. So that's where the money would be coming from. It's called a park reserve account. The current balance is around $88,000. We're expecting a little more to come in there soon, but as you can see, just these are just cost estimates. I'm waiting on hard numbers, which I inflated that a little bit because just from the, based on my last building that I purchased is that size. So actually the last building I bought was a little bigger than that and cost less than that. So I think I'm good with those numbers. I think I'm in a good position, but I'll know hopefully with this week, but I feel confident. Any other questions for me?
Gentlemen, go ahead, Mr. Cox.
Yes, I like this project and what I see, and I've been on that property at least 4 times, a couple of meetings, and by myself a couple of times several years ago. I appreciate it. My one and I like the numbers shown here, but what's missing is demolition and removal costs and asbestos containment and removal, because
You're right.
we
but
need those
don't-
kind of numbers, because that could be more than the cost of the new building, for sure.
Well, we're not going to put the new building where the old building is. That's the reason for building a new building and moving all the items out of it, getting everything done and secured, and then moving forward with
All right.
demoing the old buildings whenever we get the funding.
Okay,
That's my plan.
I missed that.
I
But,
didn't.
But I'm
I
sorry.
don't think I was clear on that
I'm sorry.
part of it.
I would like to see
Yeah, this is just a
some
concept.
numbers on that. Everything else.
Right. This
I
is
like.
concept, and if the board, you have a consensus with the concept today because of the, we like partnering with the Kiwanis or any group that comes forward and wants to help the city. We like these types of joint ventures, and we think it's it's advantageous for all parties. And what we'll do is go back, and if there's consensus today, we'll put together a plan so we can bring back for approval by the council before we move forward.
Mr. Faircloth, you had something?
Yes, I was fortunate enough to know Mr. McMahon. He was a forester, I guess, all his life. He wrote songs, he wrote poems about being out in the forest and the woods and so forth. He even painted. And this is just having the park named after him, I'm sure pleased the family greatly. And to let it deteriorate is on us. And I think we need to do something about it, stop it from deteriorating, if nothing else.
Yes, sir.
Yes, Mr. Hayes.
Mr. President, thank you. I'd like to thank the Kiwanis for, looking at this project and taking it on. It's, to me, I like it. I've seen the work that the city's doing right now at the parks there, and it still says we still have money, and, we don't want to be known as some people claim us to kicking the can down the road. We want to go ahead and start taking action on things that we can afford, and so I'm strongly would be in consensus for this item here.
Mr. Blocker, go ahead.
Yeah, a couple of questions, Wayne. I would like to see at least a couple or maybe 3 proposals on the building,
You will.
and so much more incorporated into a multi-purpose building for this, and also of this, how and what method has been established, or has there been one on the, I don't see on the, I saw a little rendering, I don't remember who had it, but a little rendering of drawings, the accessibility to these bathrooms when it's no working hours of the city, after hours or weekends. They lots of stuff I'd like to see incorporated in, but I'm down on this project here for the last 3 years. I want to see it go. And basically, every one of them old buildings except the pavilion up there needs to be gone. Period.
They're in bad shape. I agree, and that's part of our intent.
That's what I understand, because I did a lot of research and things. But that can be one of the main draws of this city, this environmental park. And I want to let's get something on the ground.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, go ahead.
Mr. Steele, the tower that's out there, that still belongs to the
City.
Florida Forestry, doesn't it?
Nope, belongs to the city now.
Is there any plan for demolition of that?
No, no, it can't. It's a historical monument now.
Right.
Well, do we have a 25-foot concrete wall around it? to keep
No, we
people
have it insured now. We, basically, we're under a program, and I can share that with you and, give you that information another time, show you what we're falling under for. It's the program that we're under for that site. It's just the base around that fenced area and the tower itself. And that was done by previous council.
Okay.
It's under a historical registry with some forestry. I'd have to get that exact language, but it was dedicated, and they came down from Washington D.C. and done the whole thing.
Well, my neighborhood buds and I used to play on it when there were no foresters in it.
I know
I suspect we're the ones that caused the fence to be put around it.
it's secure. It's actually still in good shape. It's locked, even if the steps are still in good shape. It is locked up. If someone did jump the fence and climbed up it, they'd just have to climb back down, because they couldn't get in the building itself. But it's secured to the best of our ability right now. But we want to, that's part of this whole plan, is to incorporate some of this and that fire tower into this whole concept that we're starting out. And with this new building, moving those items in there, refreshing everything, and actually securing all the hard work that Mr. McMahon done over the years. In other words, keeping it there so that it's for others to enjoy for years to come. Because if we don't, like I said, by being able to partner with the Kiwanis like this, we're able to move forward and accomplish some of these things, because we just can't do it with the little, with the people I have on staff. It takes more than just that, because we have too many other obligations and responsibilities. So,
Thank you, Mr.
Speaking of that, Mr. Steele, I have a question for you. Since you're starting to categorize and or remove things from the building, is there any way that you could use youthful help? And the reason I say that is because just today I was at the Crestview High School Student Government, and they're looking for a project tied in with environmental and with the environment. And I told them we had a park here in the city that could use help, and they'd like to get involved. But it's something that I think we need to get them right away, because if we don't, they won't be excited in the future. Is there any way that students could help in that process of categorizing, documenting, moving, or whatever, all the historical things that we have in that building?
they can, if it's a school-sponsored function, so that the insurer, and we're not liable for any injuries or something like that. We don't, anticipate injuries when you're just going in and cataloging these types of items or that sort of thing. But we have to be careful especially with minors coming, and as long as it's through a school program, we can work with them like that.
All right, I'll try to
Yes.
legislate with you and them and
Yes.
see what we can work out.
Do
Thank you.
that, please, and we'll move forward with it.
All right. Any other comments, questions for either Mr. Morgan or Mr. Steele?
In closing, sir, I just thank you for your time here in the council. Well, I'm looking forward to a good working relationship, as we've already experienced with Mr. Steele. And it wasn't me. Pictures were photoshopped. I hope to get a favorable 100% support from the council on this. And once again, thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Morgan. Gentlemen, we're in a non-voting session, but what I've heard so far is everybody is supportive going forward with this project with Mr. Steele and the Kiwanis Club. All right, good enough.
Thank you.
You're dismissed now, Mr. Steele, if you want to leave.
Okay, thank you.
No, he needs to leave, really. So. Just saying. Okay, we're going to go on to item 6B, discussion of ordinance for the repeal and replacement of section 102-537 and 102-538 concerning the storage and use of recreational vehicles. Being brought to you by Ms. Teresa. Is this something I said, gentlemen?
I'm gonna see you Wednesday.
Okay, gentlemen. We're going to lead the discussion of the repeal and replacement of sections 102-537 and 102-538. And to actually place them in the current year's record, we need to read the existing verbiage into it. Section 102-537, house cars and camper trailers used for living and sleeping purposes prohibited except in a licensed trailer park. It shall be unlawful for any person to park or keep any house car or camp trailer which is commonly used for living or sleeping purposes upon any parcel of land in the city except upon a regularly licensed public trailer park in the city. Section 102-538, storage of camp trailers, other types of house trailers. A camp trailer, which is defined as a trailer of 24 feet and under in length, which is used primarily for camping purposes, may be stored on a parcel of land where a main dwelling is located thereon, providing that the setback requirements and the side yard requirements as provided in this chapter are complied with, and providing further that the city may issue a permit for storage for other type of house trailers for a period of up to 5 days, but in the event the camp trailer or house trailer may not be used for living or sleeping purposes, nor have utility services connected thereto. As with any change within our code, an ordinance is required. So this ordinance will be to amend Part 2 of the Code of Ordinances of Crestview, Florida, Chapter 102, Land Use Regulations, Article 2, Mobile and Manufacturing Houses. The purpose of the ordinance will be, as I said, to repeal Section 102-537, house cars and camp trailers used for living and sleeping purposes prohibited except in a licensed trailer park, and Section 102-538, storage of camp trailers and other types of house trailers, and providing for the addition of Section 102-537, outdoor storage of recreational vehicles, and Section 102-538, temporary use of recreational vehicles. The purpose of the amendment is to provide an orderly, safe, and effective parking of recreational vehicles within residential districts of the city of Crestview. Furthermore, the amendment will bring the city of Crestview land development regulations into the present day and allow for a more orderly and flexible means of protecting public health, safety, and general welfare in emergency situations. In our finding of fact, the amendment will promote safe storage and operation of recreational vehicles within the city's recreational districts. There's over 7,800. We have illuminated them in red. At this current time, there's 7,858 parcels that will be under this particular amendment. This amendment strikes a balance between what was previously permitted to occur in residential districts and the absence of any regulation concerning recreational vehicles. This amendment is in response to a public outcry and concern and seeks to find a compromise between conflicting public interests. Several public hearings have been held to conduct in the ordinance in according with Chapter 166.041 Florida statutes by the Crestview Planning Board, who sits as the local planning agency, with its recommendations reported to the City Council. This document contains recommendations from the LPA. The amendment is consistent with the adopted comprehensive plan and is in the best interest of the city of Crestview and its citizenry. As we step through what is proposed, I thought maybe this would give us a line-by-line discussion of what was actually proposed by the LPA, and the board could discuss it as we run through in order to have any adjustments made with the recommendations of the local planning agency. The proposed code budget read, Section 102, 537, outside storage of recreational vehicles. Okay? In Section A, the provisions of the section for the storage of recreational vehicles designed as temporary living quarters for recreational, camping, and travel use, which either in its own motor power or is mounted or drawn by another vehicle, van conversions, park trailers, fifth-wheel trailers, and other similar types of vehicles, including trailers used for to transport such vehicles, shall apply to all parcels within the city limits of Crestview that are assigned the single-family dwelling district zoning.
And would you stop right there, please?
Yes,
Focusing on what we just read, does anybody here have any objection to the applicability paragraph that you just read? I didn't think it would be, but I just want to be sure. If you go on to Part B now.
yeah. We would like to stop at each subsection.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's what I'd like you to do.
Okay. B, purpose and intent. The purpose of this section is to regulate the outdoor parking and storage of recreational vehicles as defined in 102-537D. This section is adopted in an effort to promote off-street parking, safe vehicular traffic flow, to preserve peace and good order, to promote aesthetic beauty of the community, and to enhance the value of the property therein, and to promote the health, safety, and general welfare of the citizens of Crestview, Florida. Of Crestview, Florida.
Any comments on, questions on that section? Okay, go ahead and proceed.
Okay. C, generally, recreational vehicles except as providing in Section 102-538, which are used and intended to be used for living and sleeping purposes, are prohibited except in licensed trailer and recreational vehicle parks.
Any issues there? Or D?
Mr. President, yes.
Yeah, go ahead, Mr. Faulkner.
From much research, I know we have places in 3 counties in the state of Florida, municipalities, where recreational vehicles, 28 foot up to 36 foot, has been parked in the city, similar regulations, similar to what we got in our city of Crestview, and by a complete enclosure infrastructure. That vehicle was permitted, authorized to be enclosed in that at all times.
Mm-hmm.
That could happen right here in our city of Crestview. Period.
Good.
But there's too many hardships we're placing on people. And I don't want that to happen. We're here to help and work with the people, and I'm for it 100%.
Do you have any objections to what we just read?
Well, in some sense, yes.
Okay, would you identify, please?
I'm not pleased with any of it.
With, not talking about the whole ordinance now, we're talking about
The
what-
whole ordinance, really. If you want the bottom line, the whole ordinance, until we redo this thing.
What I would like you to do is focus on the subparagraph she just read and tell me if you have any objections to that subparagraph.
Part of it,
Would you identify that?
and I identified it, what I just said. Because property owners do have rights.
I understand that.
I don't want to infringe on nobody's rights and be equal.
We're not in discussion on that, Mr.
Period.
Faulkner. We're discussing subparagraph C, which doesn't talk about property rights or ownership or anything.
Now, that's section 102-538.
No, we're on 102,
I want it
537.
properly used for what it's intended to. But we're trying to put and legislation stuff in here which the property is not legislated to do. Period. There's too much misunderstanding in here, Mr. President.
I agree, we all have objections to the ordinance, which we're going to get to, but
Later
right now,
on,
we're trying to get to these sections and identify them one by one if you have objections to that section.
I don't like the word in there, it's prohibited except in a trailer park. There's many areas of our city, people owns the property, and there's plenty of property, plenty of room, everything in our ordinance and our code meets the codes, but yet and still it says prohibited
So your objection is you think people ought to be able to live in these?
on that property, in their property, in their recreational vehicle, if it's enclosure whatsoever, not that prohibited.
They could permanently live in that vehicle?
In an
Instead of a house.
enclosed structure, yes. We got many of them throughout the state.
Okay, well, that's fine. Yes, Mr. Fairclough?
I'm kinda stuck on the 24-foot.
We haven't gotten to the dimensions yet, though.
Well,
We're still on page
I
4 of 9.
I thought we were past that.
No, we're not. We're still on,
Well,
she's reading the proposed code verbiage. We haven't gotten to,
what she just read from is past the 24-foot
Yeah.
thing, but I'll,
That was the existing, we had to read it into the record.
reading
It
that one now.
exists.
Okay.
We're now reading the proposed.
okay.
and that's not mentioned yet in the proposed.
There
fact,
is
the
no
24
limit.
foot was
There
right
is no
away.
limit of how long it can be. There's no length requirement.
In the
In the
proposed one,
new-
there's no length mentioned at all.
Okay.
Okay, can we move on to definitions then, please?
Okay. Definitions used in the section, the following terms have the meaning: recreational vehicle. Any vehicle used for recreational purposes such as oversized vehicles, travel trailers, camping trailers, motorhomes, private motor coaches, any vehicle designed as temporary living quarters for recreation, camping, or travel use, which either has its own motive power or is mounted on or drawn by another vehicle, van conversions, park trailers, fifth wheel trailers, or other similar vehicles.
Anybody object to the definition of recreation vehicles? Okay,
The yard, the front. The area between the front of the building, and there is a diagram here if you get lost in the verbiage. On the next page, there is a diagram at what the verbiage is supposed to be telling.
thank you.
Okay. That area between the front building line and the front property line. The front yard is established by the greatest extent of the building face, not to include any eaves, windows, ledges, stairs, stoops, columns, or any other structural encroachments in the yard area.
Any questions, comments on that definition?
The yard rear. That area between the rear building line, otherwise known as the rear facade or face, and the rear lot line, bounded on both sides by the side property lines.
Questions, comments? Okay, let's go to the side.
Side. That area, yard side. That yard area which is not considered to be the front or the rear yard. Generally, the area between the front and the rear building lines bounded by the side property lines.
Any questions, comments on that? Okay, well, we have a diagram.
Mr. President?
Yes, go ahead,
I
Mr.
got a
Blocker.
question there.
Go ahead.
What the lady alluded to a while ago, just for information, we do have, I think we was at one time, we determined a dimension of all of these areas, both front and back, east and west side of the building, or vice versa. I know you didn't document any dimensions at all.
No, sir, these are not going with the building setbacks that
That's
have
what
a
I'm getting
definite one. If the front of your building sets 50 feet from the property line, then your front yard is 50 feet. If your building sets 100 feet from the property line, your front yard is 100 feet. Same thing for your rear. So it's a generalized definition without encumbering a certain footage. It's in consideration with the land you have. If you have a larger lot, then you've got larger yards. If you've got a smaller lot, you got smaller yards.
Well, some of these areas, we're gonna find out at a later date, they could be grandfathered in of these requirements of clearance, distance, surrounding the infrastructure itself.
Now, there are definite
Yes, there
building
is.
setback lines.
There is.
But this doesn't give any, this just proportional to whatever property you own.
But it might be helpful to John Doe to see some kind of suggested dimensions without having to go to the code and find out. If Tom, Dick, or Harry can find this here from off a line or whatsoever, all the information we can give, I think, would be very helpful.
Right. This diagram will be incorporated as part of the code when it goes into Muni code. So that way they don't have to worry about, am I 20 feet
That's
or
what
am
I'm
I
getting
30
at.
feet? If they have 50 feet, they got 50 feet. If they have 10 feet, they got 10 feet.
But
Yeah, go ahead, Mr. Fairclough.
what does the code require? The building be from the line? the
Now,
property?
the building itself, residential, single-family residential, it requires a 25-foot front setback and a 25-foot rear setback and 7.5 on each interior side. Now, that is for your building itself. You can build to that limit as long as you don't cover 40% of your lot.
Seven and a half feet, that's not much room. You can hardly drive a car between the property line and house.
Well, most people, unless they have a little tiny lot, they're not gonna build out to their building setback lines. That's just as far as you could build if you wanted to. Most people are going to want a side yard and a front yard and a backyard. If you have an 80-foot wide lot, you have 7.5 on each side, you could build a 60-foot wide house, or you could build a 40-foot wide house and have a
Well,
large setback line.
I think one of our problems here is houses that are already there.
Mm-hmm.
And they only have 7.5 feet to park their motor home.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And they can't put it in the front yard. They can put it in the backyard, but how are they gonna get it there?
I think we're
Okay.
getting a little, we haven't gotten to
We have-
defining where they have to be yet.
I
This is just defining what a front yard is, sideline, back.
I know, I'm getting ahead again. I
Okay,
just-
we'll get there.
Okay.
Go ahead.
We go to E, the outside storage of the recreational vehicles. The first line says that outside storage of the recreational vehicles shall be prohibited within the front yard. Is that something that,
Is, well,
at
I'm
this
sorry,
point in
go ahead.
time, at this point in
Anybody else?
time, would be the time to discuss what you're thinking?
Front yard might be the only area, period, available.
Gentlemen, I did not include it in your packet this time, but I have, over the course of this past year, have included numerous aerial pictures that show, especially from the Country View area, where that they have worked that out with side yard parking, where that they have actually created very nice looking parking areas. Some have little angle pieces to the side. The majority of them are within the side yard, but there are some that protrude some to the front yard. Maybe the whole unit doesn't sit in the front yard, but if you go back, and I didn't bring them tonight because I thought it was it's been provided numerous times. And they do not look, with larger lots, it doesn't look bad for it to be there because it is prepped to be there. They have a concrete drive, it angles in, you can tell the people have driven it up, and technically part of it's still in their front yard, but it is not as intrusive as you might think it would be. Now, those were also presented to the LPA, which really preferred for it to be back where that, especially on your smaller lots, that it be in the side yards. However, when posed the question of whether or not to have it come to the front yard. If the first presentation that we give you showed the representation of having a hardened surface by your driveway to accommodate a RV in your front yard. The very first diagrams of Figure 102, 537.2, which is on the next page, that gives you the storage area limits. The first pictures that we provided to the council actually portrayed storage of having a hardened surface, which you would need in the front yard because they tend to have stormwater problems there, would actually showed adjacent to the driveway a storage pad for a recreational vehicle.
But that's still the front yard.
That's because when we presented it first, that's what was there. When it mounted through and we come through 3 months of the LPA, they have removed that from the front yard. If the board wants to change the consensus of the LPA's recommendation of outdoor storage of recreational vehicles being prohibited in the front yard, it needs to be a discussion among yourselves whether that line remains in, whether it has a qualifier, whether it has some specific you can prohibited except when it can not function any other place. So.
Any other comments? I have one, but I'll wait. Any other comments,
Well, I've got
questions?
several, but probably not the right time. Go ahead.
I would just like to advise the audience, because I see people raising their hands. We have another public opportunity where we call on you. We don't do it at this time during the presentation. And it won't be futile because it's not like we can vote and then you're talking after we vote. We can't vote in a workshop. We're just trying to talk things out. And my input is I have no problem at all with having RVs, campers, whatever, in the front yard. I'm not opposed to being in the driveway or whether they put a hardened surface next to the driveway. So I'm not going to go into detail my other objections, but I don't like that prohibition saying you can't have any in your front yard. So I'll listen to opposition now. Mr. Cox.
I know where there's an RV that probably hadn't moved in months and months, and it's in a person's driveway, and it literally comes, the end of it, all the way out to the mailbox, and with less than 2 feet from the street itself. I'd hate to be the property owner adjacent there. It's not safe. You can't see, and they wouldn't get a south wind either. Totally blocked. I mean, it's just inconsiderate.
If it's within 15 to 18 feet of that pavement, it's probably in the right of way. It's no longer.
Oh, most definitely it is.
It's
all the way out to the
almost not.
mailbox,
It's
so
almost. It's.
that's-
You have approximately between, depending on your right of way width, you have approximately 15, sometimes even 18 feet between that asphalt pavement and your right of way line. When it comes off of the property and into the right of way, then we have a violation.
Which would be addressed separately as a violation.
Well, that one is already a violation in the
That's what I'm
traffic
saying.
statute.
It will be addressed separately as a different violation.
It's a different violation. It's not
Don't
not
need another
a
ordinance. to
RV,
create
it's-
another
Take care of that with an
violation.
officer going writing them a ticket.
right. It's already covered. You can't park in the right of way.
Mr.
It's
Hayes, you
already
have-
covered.
You have something.
Yes, Mr. President.
Make sure you're close to your mic if you would. please.
Yes, Mr. President, and what I appreciate the conversation that we're having here. I'm trying, what I'm looking at is the people who bought years ago in the small property lines that we have there. It wasn't their fault that the builder built smaller property lines, with that. But, the prohibiting from, being the front yard, I I'm against that. But if they're on the right of way, I'm strongly in favor of that.
That's a different violation though.
Right, but it would prohibit us, it would take this ordinance out and revert back to
Sure.
that. So I could be strong, I could be in favor of that.
Okay. One of the reasons that the lots are smaller like that is because in most covenants and restrictions from the, especially those that were created in the 80s and the very early 90s, most of it was south of the interstate, they actually prohibited the RVs, or they permitted them only in the backyard behind a fence. That's why your lots are shaped the way they're, because they allowed all the drainage to come towards the street, that the stormwater actually drains across their front yard and down into swales by the asphalt road.
What we're doing this evening is to tell to growth management how we would like this ordinance rewritten. So are we in a consensus and agreement that we need to take out that first sentence under E? The one that prohibits any parking in the front yard. Because what'll happen is after we give direction to growth management, they will bring back the ordinance one more time, because remember, we had it, we voted yay one time and nay the next time, and so we want to bring an ordinance that we're all in consensus with. So can we agree that we want sentence 1 under E to go out, or not? We have to give direction to growth management. Do we want that sentence in there?
I personally don't.
Okay, I don't either.
I don't think so.
You don't think you want it in there? Okay.
I agree with the prohibiting from the front yard.
Oh, you agree with prohibiting them from the
No.
front yard?
I agree that we shouldn't prohibit.
Okay, so you agree with taking out that sentence? Okay. Mr. Cox?
I don't like it.
You don't like,
I'm in-
you don't like the
I'm in
sentence, or
my-
you don't like we're taking it out?
I don't like them in the front yards.
Okay, so
Mr.
you don't,
President.
you want to stay in? Consensus is it's going to go out.
Mr. President,
Yes, go ahead, Mr. Fisher.
just take it, that sentence doesn't stand alone. There are going to be other factors contributing to one being parked in the front yard. For instance, say what'd you call it, not a barricade, a fence, and then maybe a hardened ground area to park it on. We're telling these people that you're gonna have to, if you're gonna get an RV and you haven't already done it, you're gonna have to spend probably up to $1,000, depending on the size of your RV, for a hardened concrete area, and then you're gonna have to spend another $1,000 on a fence. So, we've gotta consider all that stuff too, other than just not allowing it to be parked in the front yard. So that's not gonna stand alone. It's got other things to go with it that we're gonna have to decide.
Okay, if you go on to E, sentence 2, please.
Okay. Recreational vehicles are not to be lived in, slept in, or otherwise used as a residence or for residential or commercial purposes, to include storage except as provided in 102-538. And your 102-538 is your emergency temporary use, is what it keeps going back to 538.
Now, this would be the section, Mr. Blocker, I believe that you objected to. That you thought people should be able to live in there.
Just one of the things. Yeah.
Anybody else have any comments or questions? Mr. Faircloth, go ahead.
I agree that they should not be lived in. The lady mentioned that we should allow someone to stay in it for up to 3 days. How are we gonna know when that 3 days starts?
Exactly,
How are we
that's,
gonna know when it ends? You can't depend on the people to tell you, because believe it or not, some of them won't do it. So this is one of the things that every discussion we've had about this ordinance, I have said that my purpose, I don't know about everybody else, but is to make sure nobody is able to live in it. I understand it has to have electrical hookup, But if somebody's gonna live in it, unless they want them messing up their RV, they're gonna have to have water and sewage. And so, I'll admit, we need electrical hookup, but you can't hook up to water and sewage, therefore nobody can live in it.
Mr. Faircloth, this is the reason that the original 102-538, where it comes back and it says that provided further that the city may issue a permit for storage for storage or for any other type house trailer for a period of 5 days. The reason that has been out since almost since it was adopted in was there was no way to track it, no way to enforce it, since I know 2000, it has that portion has not been used. It was just reverted back to where they were prohibited to use it for living or sleeping purposes unless it was in a licensed facility. So to try to have some type of permitting for a 3-day period or a 5-day period, it's not productive. There's no way that we can
That's
utilize
what I
that.
was getting at,
Right.
not to be
Well, that's the
living
reason.
at
It's already been tried and failed. So,
That was my purpose for my comments, was that it could have electric hookup, but no water and no sewage. Therefore, nobody would be allowed to live in it.
Any other comments, questions on this particular? I would just say that my feeling was that this could have been a whole ordinance. I mean, that should be the whole purpose. I liked what the county said, you just can't live in them. That's fine with me. That's really the intent we have, is we don't want people circumventing property taxes and stuff by living in RVs and campers. So, man, I would just have an ordinance that just said that. But anyway, that's just me. So that it sounds as though that's going to stay in, right? We don't want people living in them. Good. All right. Next sentence, please.
Number 3, recreational vehicles shall not be connected to any water or sanitary sewer line or apparatus except as provided for in section 102-538. Sorry, my printer's blurry there.
Mr. President.
It's not really an apparatus, it's an
What does that mean?
appurtenance.
I don't know what it means. I'm just ignorant to that.
Well, I don't think you're alone, Mr. Hayes.
Well, I was going to say, that's not quite the word I had there.
Might have been caught by the old spell checker or something.
Yeah, I was gonna say-
Appurtenance is
I was gonna
something
say-
I'm not familiar with.
I was going to say, it looks like one of those words that you create, but we will go back and find out what happened. We've cut and pasted and regurgitated this one several times, so. But anyway, it just means that there will not be any water or sanitary sewer,
And I think that's what we all just agreed on.
okay?
Electricity is okay to keep your AC on, but this would be a sign, it just might be living in there.
Okay, I have a definition.
You look it up?
Yeah.
I was going to look it up. What does it mean?
Okay.
Oh, I thought you said you had a definition.
Well, I did, but I let it go when you said you was going to. Basically, it's an accessory to any other particular living or recreation.
Oh, okay.
Right.
Stealing off somebody else, is that it?
Right.
I was going to say, that's,
All right.
we've
I think
marked
app-
that up before,
I
so
think
it's like,
apparatus
okay. Number 4.
Yeah, number 4, please.
One recreational vehicle may be stored in the rear or side yard in the single-family dwelling district zoning, providing such recreational vehicle shall. Okay, now, before we go into the ABCDs, do we want to correct the portion of the sentence where it says may be stored in any rear or side yard?
Yeah, because we just allowed, we just took that out by allowing the front.
Right, so we're going to go ahead and alter that.
One
As per-
recreational vehicle may be stored in a single-family dwelling.
On a parcel within a single
Without a doubt,
family,
yeah.
okay.
Mr. President.
Yes, go ahead, Mr.
In reference to that, we just saying it may be stored there. We're not saying it can't be. But what we did was the front yard, but this says it may be stored if they decide they want to put in the, my understanding is if they decide they want to put it on the side or the back, they still can do that. Am I looking at that right?
Well, But the other way to look at it, if you don't, if it may be stored, and if it's not there, then it may not be stored. If it's not on the side of the,
It's a can and a can. If I want to store it on the side, there's no restrictions that I can't, based on what it says here. If I want to store it in the rear, but what, are you letting me make reflection back up here, say, anywhere in the yard? When we went to the front yard, we just consensus that we allow it to be, so we can say anywhere in the yard,
Yeah,
basically, on that.
I hear what you're saying, yeah.
Okay?
Yeah,
If-
go ahead, Drew.
If we word it as one recreational vehicle may be stored on a parcel in a single-family dwelling district zoning, that means it can be stored on the parcel. You're not defining where on that parcel. You're just defining that you're gonna store one on one parcel.
So the main thing we're looking at is whether one or more is basically what we're looking
Yeah,
at.
that's the
Do we want-
point
do
of
we
this,
wanna allow
one or more.
Or we want to allow 2 or 3 like a trailer
Or
park?
6.
Yeah. Mr. President,
Yes.
I like the 1.
I'm only kidding. All right.
Y'all laugh about that. My pop had 3, so, but we had 10 acres, so. Okay, number A, be screened from public view by a 6-foot tall privacy fence or other approved screening apparatus. That seemed to give a lot of people heartburn, so I figure y'all gonna discuss that one.
Oh, yeah. I cede to my fellow councilman first. Go ahead, Mr. Hayes.
Yeah, Mr. President, I don't think 6 foot's going to do anything.
Cover half.
I don't know how tall they are. I don't have one. What are they, 12 feet tall or?
Could be.
At least 10 feet, I know, probably.
May I remind you that in the front yard, you can only have a 4-foot fence? I just need to throw that out there.
So then we got,
In the front,
Mr. President,
25 feet.
we might as well just strike this in my,
Oh,
we
yeah.
saying 4-foot fence and this goes
Yeah.
six, if it goes 6 feet, we're still against, we're fighting ourselves. We've got ordinance says a 4-foot fence, but then we want a 10-foot screening or a 6-foot screening. So, we can strike that in my opinion.
Well, mine too. Do we have a consensus to strike that? Hearing no objections, that'll be gone away. 4B,
Be stored parallel to and immediately adjacent to the main structure if stored in the side yard.
Explain that. I mean, I just don't, I'm trying to,
Well, if you have a structure, and this is your structure sitting here, if you're gonna store it in your side yard, you're gonna be parallel right here.
okay. you
I
mean
guess that means you're not gonna be
turn it.
cockamamie like that. I don't know.
Okay, I get it. Most people can't do that anyway. Unless they
Well,
got
if you've
a
seen
huge
that
bit of
commercial
property.
where the guy's backing it up, going over people's landscape,
that would be me.
that would. So is this irrelevant? Is it?
Yeah.
Some areas you may have 20 feet, 50 feet, 150 feet. That's the discretion of the owner.
I don't know what immediately adjacent means.
I've never liked it. Again, I just think we're just getting into the weeds here, that it's the kind of things that HOAs do, not cities. I don't care for it.
Don't go there.
Mr. President,
Yes, go ahead, Mr.
if
Fairclough.
we're gonna be more than 10 minutes, I need a 5-minute break.
Okay,
So we're gonna be more than 10
my
minutes.
guess is we'll probably be more than 10 minutes. So what I'll do is
I agree
adjourn the
with-
meeting for a potty break.
I don't like it. I'm glad that you said that, Mr. Fairclough.
I should have said recess the meeting, adjourn the meeting, we're done. Warmer here than usual.
You gonna take questions from the virtual viewers?
I don't think it's a good
There's a
habit.
few out there, but not
I don't
many.
think it's a good habit to get into because we're gonna get all kinds of random things. We'll be here until midnight.
All right, just asking. They're asking questions. I don't know.
I
if
understand that. And you can give them my link to my Facebook page.
Well, we'll talk. You're not gonna.
Okay.
A couple days, we'll get together and do it.
Tell them contact me.
Just sit right there. Thanks. Okay, yeah, check with them to see if there's no issue there or whatever. Like I said, our first friend that went in this Friday, coming up, to somebody in
Let's get this party started.
I don't know. I want to get
I was just about my limit.
So, no, jump on that.
How do you program it?
All right, now we're back in session, please.
I move we adjourn.
Okay, I think we're on 4C.
Something similar to that, so.
Okay, we did,
I get a kick. I love Facebook.
Excuse me, we're back in session.
did we officially remove B?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, I just didn't have it marked out. Okay, C. Be set back a minimum of 3 feet from the rear or side property line. I'm assuming we're going to pull rear and side and utilize be set back a minimum of 3 feet from the property line. That is your typical setback distance of any accessory structure on city property.
Yeah, just change it, verbiage, you, we're all
Except
in
for the
agreement on that?
front.
Just change it to property line instead of
Yeah, well,
side.
except for the front. You can't put it 3 feet from the street.
You can't put an accessory structure in your front yard at all.
I mean, appurtenance?
Well, according to our code, you can't.
Okay. I like the 3 feet though, because, if they get any closer than that to a fence, they're not gonna be able to cut all the weeds and everything else that grow up between it and the fence, and it starts growing through the fence, and the neighbor's gonna get upset.
We like that one. We're just gonna change it instead of rear or side, just make it property line.
Okay.
Okay,
D.
D?
An electrical service connection to a recreational vehicle shall be done in a lawful, safe, and secure manner in accordance with the manufacturer's specification and the applicable Florida Building Code.
Whatever that is. Yeah. Any objections to that comment? No. Okay, that's a no-brainer.
Okay. Number 5.
5,
The provisions of this section are not intended, nor shall they be interpreted as in any way pre-exempting the requirements of any private agreement and/or covenant.
Which in English means?
Which means we're not violating any rights from covenants and restrictions from homeowners association. We are simply releasing certain regulations that the city holds.
Okay.
We do not violate any homeowners, if your homeowners association requires something different,
Yep.
that's what you'll
So I
have to
thought of that.
abide by.
Just wanted you to make sure everybody knew that.
No.
Move on to F, if you would, please.
F, permitting requirements. Prior to the placement of any fencing or screening, a building permit may need to be obtained from the city of Crestview.
Mr. President, we can strike that one. Or change it.
That's already in place somewhere else, isn't it? A building
Yes,
code
sir.
or something?
There's a building code.
Yeah.
It's already in our building code.
Yeah.
4 feet, right?
It is covered within the other codes for fencing.
So we wouldn't necessarily need that if it's already covered in fencing, right?
Yeah. That's what we're saying. We don't really, probably don't need number 2 either, do we?
Well, in actuality,
Yes.
prior to the addition of any waterproof, impermeable, or impervious surface, a building permit must be obtained by the city of Crestview. It is advisable that these, as heavy as these RVs are, and as expensive as they are, if you go out and spend $50,000 for an RV, $1,000 to set it on a piece of concrete is a small investment. It also will alleviate damages with your stormwater because it is, your RV itself is an impervious surface. You've added that much surface anyway. But by allowing water simply to run, because most of all the lots drain towards the road, you're going to have trenches, we're going to have stormwater problems. When it begins wearing the grass away and the dirt comes down and fills up the swale, then you're going to have to require city services to clear out the swales for the water to not run up on people's property or flood the road. It's just advisable to have something that weighs as much as an RV on an impermeable surface.
I'm not challenging the need for it.
No, I'm
I
saying
think
that's
there's
the need. That's the reason we need.
But
and
this
it needs-
doesn't address the need. This addresses the need to get a permit.
Yes, sir.
It doesn't say you have to have it. It says if prior to adding one, you have to have a permit, and we already require that. If you put an impermeable surface anywhere near your house, you have to get a city permit.
Mr. Whitten, you would be surprised at the people who do not know that.
Well, you'd be surprised people don't know that they have to get a permit for fencing, but we just decided that it was duplicated with the ordinance we already have.
Right, and we're also not requiring fencing. We would like to require that they be on a hardened surface. It's not part of the, honestly, I don't think it's verbalized.
I don't have any heartburn with that, because
I don't
it's
either.
advisory in nature, that if you're gonna put it in, get a city permit, so. All right, let's move on.
I have no problems with that either.
All right, let's move over to page 25 to 26. I like that. 102-538, subparagraph A.
Emergency temporary use. Recreational vehicles designed as temporary living quarters for recreation, camping, and travel use, may either have its own mode of power or mounted on or drawn by another vehicle, such as park trailers, fifth wheel trailers, and other similar types of vehicles may be temporarily used for residential purposes in the event of flood, fire, or other natural disaster, which leaves the main dwelling uninhabitable, provided the following requirements are met.
If you could stop right there.
Okay.
I think the question would be where it says, where I just lost it here, natural disasters. Okay, so we're talking about natural disasters locally. But what if you have a relative that suffered a natural disaster and you need to accommodate them in your home? Would that be covered by this?
Do you want it to be covered by this?
I would like it, but
But then we need to maybe establish some type of rules and regulations. This 538 is going to go hand in hand with our FEMA ordinance that is waiting in the wings to be passed. So this kind of follows most of their guidelines.
no, I'm just probably reading into it. No one else has any issues. Go ahead and continue on, please.
Number 1, the parcel must be located within a single-family dwelling district zoning prior to the occupancy of the, that's number 1.
We don't raise our hand, we're okay.
Okay. Number 2, prior to the occupancy of the recreational vehicle, a temporary use permit which allows the recreational vehicle to be temporarily used in a residential capacity must be obtained from the city of Crestview. And those permits are usually, in time of natural disasters, are a free permit. They're not charged. There's no charge. They're usually simply and it's usually authorized by the state. So, the number 3, the temporary use permit is valid for 180 consecutive days. However, if the continuation of the construction elements is necessary for the structure to return to an acceptable condition, and there is a valid and open building permit for the construction activities, the temporary use of the vehicle may continue via a new permit or an extension of the permit, and I would like to say existing permit there.
Mr. Fairclough?
I would like to see added there, a new permit for an additional 180 days. If they can't build a house in 6 months, then they don't need to be trying. But I don't want to see the RV sitting there while the owner of the property tries to rebuild the house himself, and it's going to take a year or more. I would say limit it to 180-day permits.
Normally, your extension runs about what they call a half-life, which would be a 90-day permit. So they would have 180 days and then an extension for another 90 days. And this must, if you notice, it must be a valid, open building permit, which means when a permit is open, your building inspector and official are checking to make sure that there's work being done. It's not sitting idle, that there's accomplishment going. So that's in order to maintain a valid, open permit. If he notices that it's been sitting idle for 2 months and they come in for an extension, they're going to ask, why has this been idle? Why has there been no progress? Why hasn't there been some inspections along? Now, sometimes in severe storm cases, there's shortage of roofers and there's shortage of framers, and you may be on a list and it may take you 60 days to even get someone to help construct.
I just think 6 months is enough to build a house. But if they had some weather delays or whatever, I don't mind giving them an extension, but I don't want to see them coming up for 3 or 4 extensions.
Right, no, you only get one.
Yeah, well,
You get one
that
choice.
That needs to be articulated in there.
Mm-hmm. Extending for 90 days to 180 day.
I would say no longer than 90, yeah.
Anybody else object to that or concur with it, or?
But Doug, you got to remember, old folks work slow.
How well I know that.
Mr. President, I don't have any objections. I know we're fortunate to have 2 gentlemen on our council that are familiar with construction process, and I would rely on their expertise on that.
All right, let's move on to,
So it's going to be for make sure I understand
180
correctly.
consecutive days or 180-day extension. Is that what I heard?
Yeah, that's
No,
that's
90.
state.
90-day extension.
90-day extension, my bad.
That's what
I
I've
mispronounced
got.
it.
May be continued via new permit or an extension of the existing permit for 90 days. Okay, number
Okay.
4,
Number 4.
the recreational vehicle shall be fully licensed and ready for highway use.
Any problem with that? Nope. Move
And
on.
that's some of the state regulation there. 5, an electrical service connection to the recreational vehicle may be done in a lawful, safe, and secure manner in accordance with the manufacturer's specification and the applicable Florida Building Code.
Mr. President,
Yes, go ahead.
I don't know,
Shall be
Ms.
done,
Teresa,
not may.
she said may,
But it states different.
but it should be shall.
I'm sorry, it says,
Says shall be done.
But she said may, but I.
May.
Oh,
I'm sorry, let me read it for the
she
record
was
again.
improvising.
Sorry, guys. It's been a long, long day since 3 this
We
morning.
understand.
Any electrical service connection to a recreational vehicle shall be done in a lawful, safe, and secure manner in accordance with the manufacturer's specifications and applicable Florida Building Code.
I can live with that.
Thank you.
All right.
Number 6, recreational vehicles must be pumped out by a Florida licensed and bonded wastewater hauler or taken to a fully licensed wastewater receiving station. Under no circumstances shall connections be made to any sanitary sewer service or any disposal of wastewater be disposed of in a manner inconsistent with this code of ordinance and Florida law.
No objections there?
Um,
Yeah, go ahead, Ms. Plucker.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
We're talking about recreational vehicles that are not being used, but yet still here, we're talking about now being pumped out.
This temporary.
This
You
is
bring them
under-
back temporary.
This is the this is emergency services. This is when a hurricane or a tornado or a big tree fell in your house or whatever. Your gas heater exploded and blew all your walls out. This is an emergency service. And yes, to allow temporary use in the residential capacity, then they would obtain a permit saying, you know, we've had this disaster, this is what we're going to do for it, and this is how we're going to be consistent. And I'm sure that the most RVs have a certain amount of water, potable water, that is within the vehicle, and they also have storage capacity for their gray water for their sanitary sewer. However, they must be eliminated properly, unlike the lady 2 months ago that eliminated it in the field. So,
Yeah.
Mr. Fairclough, did you have something?
Well, yes, I was going to ask if the Code of Ordinances and Florida law would require the owner of that RV to present a receipt where he emptied his sewage to prove that that's what he did rather than just open it and ride down the highway.
you can demand to see a receipt, but once again, it's like the permits for whether or not they're going to use it. We can't follow them and make sure that they go to the proper facility.
That's true. This may be as good as we can do then.
All right. B,
B, the provisions of this section are not intended to, nor shall they be interpreted as in any way preempting the regulations of any private agreements and/or covenant.
same thing we had in the other section. All right, do have any last comments on this, sorry, Bill, on this ordinance?
Are there any other
If not,
additional?
you have everything written down and
Is-
when do you propose you'll have that back to us for first reading?
Well, because we are under the gun to get our FEMA ordinance completed, we're going to have it as soon as possible. realistically, we will probably try for the first meeting in February.
Yeah. I
We
really
would like
that.
it to- we
The-
would
the
like
only
it to go
reason I'm
hand in
saying that
hand.
Because even though I think we've been doing a thorough job, it's taken a long time on this, and we need to put this to bed. Anyway,
Yes.
thank you so much for your work and getting back to us on that.
Was there anything additional that we did not cover that would needed to go in here? I just don't want to get here with the, back up to the reading and then say, well, I wished we had included this.
Are you preaching with a rifle or a shotgun?
Well, I'm just,
Mr. President,
Yes, go ahead, Mr.
I think my fellow councilmen I think we really made an honest compromise that we're trying to look out for all our citizens, knowing that nobody's going to like 100% of things, but I think we're fair and reasonable in what we did. So I applaud my fellow councilmen for their consideration and their thoughts and their input.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen.
All right, thank you. At this time, I would open up the floor to anybody in the audience who would like to address the city council. Anybody in the audience? Steve, did you fill out a card?
I did not.
All right, I'm gonna let you come up anyway, but I'm gonna put a demerit next to your name.
I didn't know I was going to do it until after the comments during the thing.
It's all right. Give us your name and
Yeah.
address, Steve. And
Get my notes up here. I got them.
you got 3 minutes up.
Stephen Strom, 139 Villa Crest Drive. Been here about 27 years next month. Two things I noticed tonight. Three. One, you guys have come a long way on this ordinance from where it was a year ago. Two, for the occupation of the RV during an emergency, getting the permit, who does the people see for the permit? It's not codified. Do you follow what I'm saying? What office does a person go to pick up that permit
You're
in an
saying
emergency?
that you would like to see it identified in the ordinance where they go in City Hall?
Or at least, maybe not in the ordinance itself, but as a footnote to see where, so the general population knows where to go, so they don't violate the ordinance.
I hear what you're saying. It's
Okay.
City Hall. When you get to City Hall, you have permitting and you have code enforcement and all those things.
Yeah, because I know where to go get building permits, but where do I go to get this permit?
It'd be the same. Permitting. It's
Okay,
permitting.
but, people need to know that. Lastly, I'm afraid a Pandora's box may have been opened up tonight. Mr. Cox inadvertently opened it up, I think, when he mentioned parking in the right-of-ways. I've always been concerned about that because utilities run under those right-of-ways. In some neighborhoods, there's gas, there's electric, and of course, water. We have a lot of boats on trailers. There's one on Mr. Cox Street, the other end from his house, that is almost to the road, well past the power poles. And power poles are about 6 to 12 inches from the property line proper. So it's almost into the road. I mean, this is just one that I know of off the top of my head. So code enforcement may be getting some phone calls on that, now that you've opened up that Pandora's box. I see a question on your face, sir.
You're not allowed to ask questions to the council.
No,
No, you can comment to us.
okay. That's it.
Okay,
This time I'll entertain any comments that you folks have or questions.
thank you.
Okay?
You didn't need a second one, Ms. Jones, but go ahead.
Okay. One, I'd like to commend you. The 538 sounds really good. I like the idea of the limited on the temporary, but it does give an advantage of that. When we talked about 537, we talked about 3 feet from the property line. That sounds good. And you can put it in there. Mr. Cox brought up about, letting someone's grass grow. Well, if you're 3 feet from the property, or I think it was,
No, it was
somebody
Mr.
was talking
Fairclough.
about Mr. Hayes. if you're 3 feet from the property line, you can get a lawnmower down through there. That was a big issue. I have pictures I took this afternoon of my neighborhood and around my area and everything, and my own personal area. When our RV is parked in our front yard on a hardened surface, and we purposely left room between the property line and the hardened surface to get our trash can to the road and get the lawnmower through. This is something that, when you issue permits, needs to be looked at. You know, make sure that when you issue that permit for a hardened surface, it's not going to be, you know, too restrictive that you can't mow your yard or get your trash can to the front yard, to the street. 3 feet back, I would say your average driveway in my neighborhood is probably 35 feet. 30-foot motorhome, you're just about maxing it out. I'm there. So, and I drove around this afternoon. The things I've heard this evening are very much more comforting to me, knowing that my city council is listening to us. And hopefully the next meeting, when we look at this, it will be all put together in words. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for your remarks. Anybody else in the audience who would like to speak at this time? Well, she always hits the phone when she needs it.
Cal Zethmar, WAAZWJSB, 506 West First. I don't have one of these wonderful things, and I probably never will at what time I got left to go fishing. But I was reading and watching. Your item 5 in that 538 provides for an emergency hookup to electrical. Now, if they're going to be in that thing for 3, 4, 5 months, don't they need drinking water and to take a shower and take a bath? I know some of you own one of these things, so you got to get water to it. If you're going to carry jugs out and dump it in.
No, the way it's worded, Cal, says you can live in it, which means you would have the water in there.
Well, you have to have a way to connect to it then. So I'm just thinking that that sewer water thing, with the humane thing might be to have that other sentence in there. They could, under the legal, correct, proper
During
ways.
temporary living, they could hook that. Is that what you're saying?
Get their water in their sewer. They're going to pay for the water and pay the sewer bill anyway then. If they're on the city utilities. Now, if they don't have city utilities, now they'd have to have the right kind of connection work done to make sure it's not flowing out on the ground. Because they're going to need drinking water, shower water, bathing water, cooking water, and then that water's got to go somewhere. So maybe
We
there's
got to
just
cover
something.
where it's going. We just didn't have it cover where it's coming in.
Yep, well. It might just be another sentence. That would be the place somewhere to have another sentence, wouldn't it be, to have that in there? I won't be doing it, but I just thought that looks like something missing.
You understand what he's saying is,
I do understand what he's saying, that there is no provision to hook up for water or to hook up for sewer. Most, mobile vehicles are simply that, they are self-contained, they carry their water, and they.
no, that's not true. No, you hook up to water.
Most of your, motorized vehicles have a water capability, and you have a gray water capability. There's nothing in your ordinance that allows for a water hookup.
Well, that's the point we're bringing up. If you're going to temporarily live in there, you ought to be able to hook up to water, because you do have exterior hookup water to your campers. So we don't want someone living there in 6 months and not have any water in there.
Mr. President.
We talked about how we're going to get rid of sewage. We didn't know how we're going to bring water in.
And I might be looking at this wrong, but if your whole house blows away, yeah, you're not gonna have that. But to connect up to city water, you gotta have all whatever it takes to hook up for that.
No. You just hook up to your tap. Hook up to your.
Oh yeah, we understand that, but that's only temporary. That's not permanent.
Yeah.
Yeah, you just go turn your water on, and then when you're through, you cut it off.
But what he's saying is that in our ordinance, it doesn't say you can even temporarily do that during an emergency. That's all he's saying. We don't have it in there, you can temporarily do that. What we have is a prohibition against having any water. But during an emergency, we don't say you can put the water on when you're temporarily living there. You see? You don't see the difference between the two?
Yeah, Mr. President, it's just me. If I was in that situation, I'd probably go inside the house, because it's gonna probably be something unless it's completely gone. But I can see putting that in there if it No, I'm having problems with that.
Or the wash your body and, yeah. that's fair.
Found the yard.
Ms. Teresa can show us where it is, but the part in the ordinance that prohibits hooking up to water and sewerage, it should say except in a temporary
Emergency situation.
emergency situation.
Yeah.
Okay, let's go. That's the reason I was wondering if y'all got anything else, because
Well,
there's a
we
couple of
did
things
until
that
Mr.
were
Kell
not.
identified it for us.
Mhm.
He helped us out.
Okay. Under E2, it says recreational vehicles shall not be lived in, slept in, or otherwise used as a residence or for residential or commercial purposes to include storage, except those provided in 102-538. So, if, and the very next one, it says residential, recreational vehicles shall not be connected to any water or sanitary sewer line, except as provided in section 102-538. So in 102-538 is where if you want a connection to a utility, it needs to be elaborated there. Now, sewer is a different animal, but water would be a necessity.
You can't have the sewer.
You can't have sewer.
We've
That's-
identified how you're gonna, go to a dump station or get certified
Right.
or whatever.
But you did not, however, identify water.
Getting the water in, yes,
Mhm.
exactly.
Mr. President, emergency situation, I'm for that, where you can get water.
Yeah. We just have to word it, we have to find a way to
Word it,
put it
yeah.
in and word it. Yes, Mr. Plugman.
I think we are to mandate, put in this in an emergency situation. There is no restriction to utilities, water and sewer, power.
We cannot
Yeah.
take responsibility for dumping within
Let me
your,
tell you something. I worked foot, hand, and toe with the people over in Camille when it hit our neighboring state. I seen all kind of situations that them poor people encountered. Not even over there, but in Santa Rosa County, I worked all through Gulf Breeze. Of all them utilities and vehicles parked on the driveways, what they encountered, utilities, that was a nightmare. Not only that, in 3 other states I've had people associated with, there's too many ifs. We got too many gray areas in here. We still haven't even covered the surface yet. But utilities is a mandatory necessity.
the normal house sanitary sewer facilities, they don't really have the ability to have that dumped in. I'm sorry, I have no idea how that would work.
I can tell you are not an RVer.
I ride
Everything,
in
the
one
black
very
tank,
well.
the gray tank is all limited,
Yes,
and you got to empty them.
yes, sir.
You got to flush them. You got to sanitize them.
Yes, sir.
And I ain't no bucket person.
Well, that's the reason most people take it to a wastewater hauler to allow them to do that, or have one come to them and pump it. It's a normal, pumping it out is a normal activity, especially like in an RV park. They utilize the licensed wastewater person to pump it out. They even run
Been
around.
there, done that.
Yep. But it doesn't leave it to the individual property owner to do that.
Unreal.
Mr. President.
Notice it.
Yeah, Mr. Hayes.
I have a question for our attorney. In reference to the sewer thing, if we were even to think about allowing that, which I'm not in favor of, and they have a big spill, the city, if we make an ordinance such as that, is it probable that we could be liable?
Sure.
Okay.
No, I think we get the sewage well covered. I mean, it's, even if you go to a campground, you can dry camp. And waiting to get a spot. When you dry camp, you're responsible for draining your own tanks, taking them to a dump station or whatever. So our concern was, we figured out the output, we didn't allow any input. That's the water coming in, we just need to find out where to put that.
Mr. President,
Yeah, Mr. Fairclough.
I don't remember which part it is. Teresa's been through this so many times, she probably can tell me off the top of her head, but where the part is where we're allowing electrical hookup.
It's actually listed in 2 spaces. It is allowing it within,
Okay, well, that's irrelevant right now. But in that spot where we're allowing electrical hookup, we might also put in there that water only would be allowed in a temporary emergency situation. In no situation would sewage hookup to the Crestview sewage system be allowed.
Yeah, what you've got is under 102-538-5.
that is the.
That's for
set-
temporary use. It says electrical service, shall be done lawful, and then you could also add in there that water service could be connected.
It
And
is
that's
all-
only under the temporary use.
No, it's actually, your electrical service is actually in E4D. The electrical service is allowed for the storage of recreational vehicles in order to allow them to dehumidify.
Yeah, but I'm talking about for temporary
But
vehicles.
for temporary, it's
So
in,
under-
that's the
under
reason it's in both places.
102-538A-5, you could just add in the use of water, which could be where you see you can have a electrical service connection. If you just put it there, then it doesn't apply to the other section, only applies to the temporary use.
Temporary use of
emergency.
water, not sewage.
Okay,
I
I would say let's insert it between 5 and 6, let it be the new number 6,
Well-
to allow for the water, and then number 6 would take care of the sewer. So you will have your electrical, your water, and then your
Okay.
sewer.
Okay.
That'll work.
That'll work.
I don't even know if we're environmentally allowed to hook up to.
We're going to check that out before we insert it. We will need to have that approved. I already got my note written. And also, back on number 2, when there's a question about the permit, and it says, just reading the end of the sentence where it says, must be obtained by the city of Crestview, we can interject there, building and inspections departments at City Hall.
Okay,
And that's pretty straightforward.
all right.
If that, yes,
Don't have any problems with that.
okay.
Before we wrap everything up, Mr. Blocker, you said something that concerns me. You said there are too many gray areas, so we need to clean them up. And Teresa had asked that at this workshop, we give her everything that we want corrected so she can bring back a clean ordinance in February. If you have some other issues that need to be addressed, we need to do it now so that she can bring us back an ordinance in February.
I do not feel that we are to prohibit the sewer system. If in case of an emergency, that party had to live there for 90 days, 60 days, 120 days, or what have you. If you use that facility, you needed to dispose of it in your sewer system. Period.
I don't know that you can tie, I'm not an expert in sewer, I don't know if you can tie a city sewer system up there permission, but we have it covered. You have to dispose of your own sewage. Anybody
Why
else?
jeopardize and penalize that property owner when they got the facility right there on their property?
Anybody else have any objections to that?
Well, in the event of a fire or a hurricane or a flood or whatever, a lot of people are inconvenienced.
Number one.
And I don't know why these people should be sitting on a patio propped up in the sunshine, because we're taking care of everything else. They have a little bit of responsibility themselves.
Are there any other issues though? Because again, you said we have a lot of gray areas here. And if we do, we need to go over them now so that we have a clean ordinance in February.
We're obligated, if possible, to provide the needed services to our citizens. Why have the service there and restrict the use of it?
So you're still on the sewage?
Indeed.
Okay, but you're in the minority there. I hadn't heard anybody else. Mr.
I'm
Cox,
sorry if you're wrong.
No, I'm not. This issue wasn't allowed in the older existing code. this was not an issue that was brought forth in previous meetings with issues. The number one issue was the length, and that's gone away. That was way far and away the number one thing. Now we're making other issues. This was a non-issue, and I'd say don't make it one. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions? Okay, I'll still open the floor if you want to come up.
I know you don't want me to ask the dozens and dozens of questions that people are commenting and asking to be asked tonight online, but there's a couple I thought interesting. One is if somebody rents a piece of property and they're allowed to have their RV on, Ken Nielsen, Crestview Community Television, live on Appleton Road, and they're allowed to have their RV there by their lease agreement or rental agreement, but the person who rents that to them does not want them to pour a pad. That's one thing I thought was interesting. So they can't have a pad. They rent the place, they're not allowed to have a pad, but they own an RV. Is that just something to throw out there to you? And then, I don't know what this is worth, but somebody said that they have a boat that is like a cabin with a bathroom and a kitchen and a bed. They actually could, just throwing it out there, that they could live in. And a lot of people are asking about boats. Are big boats in people's driveways or big boats, like 30-footers or whatever. I don't know how many there are. I haven't seen any, but if there was, is that addressed in any of this either? So that's just a couple, lots of questions. That's just a couple of the main ones that were out there.
Thank you for sharing that with us. I don't think we want to touch that right now. I mean, it just took us this long to get through RVs and campers. Okay, we have taken, any other comments, questions from the audience? Is there anything that anybody would like to share? I'll start with the department heads. Anything you want to share with us before we close the workshop? Any important things going on besides people robbing for 2 packs of cigarettes? Go figure, huh?
Welcome to my world.
Do you have anything?
He was one of our patrons, so.
Chief, you got anything?
No, it's just, I guess just real quick, shout out to the fact of, we are up there at the Ryan's building, performing training. Chick-fil-A allowed us access up there. We're very thankful for that. All of our guys have been training since, last week, Thursday. We've trained all through the whole weekend, and they're still continuing on with several different scenarios, ventilation training, firefighter rescue, occupant rescues. It's been a huge asset to us. So
That's great. Yeah, I saw you over there. That's
So
good.
just trying to give a shout. We are not officially. We are not burning it. We cannot burn it. We're not going to burn it.
On purpose.
Trust me, I would love to, but
All right,
but we are
Teresa,
not
you
doing it.
have anything? Mr. Hawley,
That's the first I heard about the availability.
Mr. Cox, Ms. Faircloth, anything else?
He did share.
Mr. Hayes?
Only other thing for the citizens who might know, as we know legislative session now, even as a citizen, you have to be elected official. If you have some concerns, talk to your senator, your state senator, your state representative, and let your needs or wants be known on. They are discussing some things which might be beneficial to Crestview. Everyone's aware that I talked with, which was about 12 people in one day last week. Everybody's aware of 85. They know it's their issue and a federal issue. They know it's not Crestview's issue, but they are working towards that goal. Everyone I talk about, everybody knows about 85. So maybe we get that out to the public. 85 does not belong to Crestview. The state belongs to the state and the federal government, and they are aware of the situation, and they're working towards that issue. That's all, Mr. President.
Thank you. Ms. Blocker, anything else?
I rest my case at this moment.
All right, thank you. The only thing I have is that we had a Okaloosa County League of Cities dinner last Thursday night, and our city clerk, Ms. Roy, did a one-person show getting everything ready and did a superb job. Everybody had a good time, everybody leaving. We had like 79, 80 people there, everybody leaving said they had a great time, and anything like that makes the city look good. And so I was going to thank her publicly, but she's not here, so thank her anyway.
Could you relate the general's message about the traffic?
The general, who from Eglin, the commander of the test wing, seemed to me very receptive to working with us and the county and FDOT and the state and anybody else to help us with the traffic issues caused, from people coming back and forth between Eglin and the 7th, which falls underneath Eglin. And to me, he came across as very personal and very receptive. And in fact, I've been working with Commissioner Fountain. We're going to plan another joint public meeting where we're going to have the city, the county, FDOT, and Eglin all together in a public meeting and see what we can wash out. So I'm glad you brought that up. Thank you.
Mr. President. And
Yeah,
you
go
might
ahead.
note, I'm sure Mr. Blocker, I overheard that conversation when he was asking him how's it going to affect the growth, continued. He said it's going to continue to grow the military around here, so you can expect more people coming this way.
All right. With that, I'm going to officially adjourn the meeting. Thank you all for coming.